Yo, YouTube, what's up? Hey, I've just disassembled the Wayne WLS150, the 1.5 horsepower jet pump, because I tried to take apart the induction motor rear cover. The nuts that hold the induction motor assembly together, those nuts just fell out. There's nothing holding the nuts in. So I had to figure out how to get this thing apart. So I've taken it apart, and I'm just gonna step through putting it back together and what I did to take it apart. It's kind of an all-in-one. What a pain in the butt. I couldn't find any other videos that help me disassemble this thing, so I just kind of did it hard knock style, if you know what I mean. Alright, so again, this is for the Wayne WLS. Oh, is that going to be backwards? Well, regardless, the WLS 150 pump. I'm sure the other ones that are similar in nature are the same. So I've got my parts broken down. I've got the front of the impeller here with its associated O-ring. I've got the rear housing for the impeller. So I'm going to assemble those pieces kind of last. I'll start with reassembling the motor, the induction motor first, because I need to assemble that, and then I can put the front of the impeller casing together, so I can put those bolts back in. So I'm going to put the rear housing flat so I can stand the motor up without having to deal with the stem that comes out, because it clearly protrudes a little bit, so I wouldn't be able to lay this flat. So I'm just going to use that to lay it flat. And then I've got my 4 bolts that hold the entire motor assembly together. So I'm going to do that right now. You'll notice on this little cutout right here and here, there's no other side that does that, so that's bottom, just for reference. This goes down towards the mount on the rear casing. This is the entire casing, the motor with the induction coils in it. Just so you can see this, it's just hollow. That's where the stem goes. This is the rear, has your voltage selector, plus your hookup wires here, and this will go towards the front. Then the next piece will be the rear seal, which I was initially trying to get off first so I could have better access to the electrical. So won't make that mistake again. Drop these. These are what I try to take out from the very beginning, these long motor housing bolts. So as I unscrewed it, the nuts just fell off into the impeller area, and actually just behind the rear shaft. So putting those back in. Looks like I'm going to tweak this just a little bit. There we go. So it looks like there's 3 points of contact. One at the very rear, one in the middle where all that comes together as it installed, and then one at the very front. So making sure all those line up is going to be critical. Okay, I've got all 4 of those in. Now I got to nut them, which was my initial problem. So I'm going to take and kind of stand this up and set it down, and I've got the motor complete like this. I never mounted this silver piece to the back of the impeller housing because this is where I got to install the nuts for the bolts coming in the back. So I'm just going to set this flush, move the impeller housing out of the way. And that's tight. So I'm going to try to get a socket. I'm going 9/32. Nope. I'm going 1/4 on the bolt, and I'm going 11/32 on the nut. And I'm going to want to see that all 3 of these parts seal back together. Yeah, that looks good. Looking good. And why they didn't build or thread those nuts into the housing itself is ridiculous. Go around and just hand tighten, snug these up. I'm not going to torque them down very hard. That's why I'm not using a socket. Or socket wrench, I should say. Okay. So, the induction motor is assembled. I've got my bolts coming through my 4 corners, and they're nutted. There's nothing, like I said, there's nothing holding those in. So if you take these out, your four bolts here, those are just going to fall down. You're into a disassembly of the entire thing. Okay, so I'm going to put this back into the rear housing. So I'm going to have to hold this. I guess I don't have to. I got to attach the impeller on the other side, but it looks like I can bolt this to the impeller housing, which would be nice. Get it in place. And I'm using the bolts are 2 different sizes for the impeller housing. And the smaller ones are what attach the induction motor to the rear of the housing. And these are 9/16. Snug, don't over tighten. Great. So I can stand this up. We're now attached to the rear of the housing. Block the sun out there. Okay. We're going to attach the impeller blade next. It just screws on. I'll get a close up of that. So here's the impeller. Okay, this is the front. This is the rear. This is threaded, so we're gonna have to be able to hold the shaft coming through the induction motor. Hold that still. So there's on the back of that shaft, on the far rear where your electrical connections go. There's a place for a flathead screwdriver. So we'll be able to hold the back of that while we screw this to the front. Thread it onto the front. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey on this one. Yep. Spinning him back. We're going to snug this up. I'm going to hold in the rear. And it stops. Spins freely. Doesn't grab. Okay. Next is the impeller housing itself. This plastic housing. So here's the rear. Here's the front. When I was taking it apart, I noticed the two, I'd call this the inlet outlet. This is larger. This is going to go at the bottom. This is going to go at the top. and the bolt pattern will line up. So don't get that turned like so, because the bolt pattern is probably the same. I could figure that out, see if you can mess that up. Let's have a look. No, the bolt pattern, you can't mess it up. So line the holes up. Yeah, and it puts it in the correct orientation. And these are just Phillips machine screws. Wow. Again, just snugging these up. And last but not least is the front housing. Here's our front housing. You notice the drain plug, my O-rings in here. You make sure that doesn't get pinched. Don't want that leaking. Okay, here's the front of it. Not sure if that's going to be easier to keep that on the rear housing. Maybe I'll do that. There's a lip on the rear housing that I'm going to use. See if I can't get this on there. So the center shaft is lining me up. It's holding the weight right now. I'm just giving it a little back and forth wiggle. That went on pretty easy. I think I'm good there. Okay, and then I'm going to use the 4 bolts, the 4 larger bolts, to attach those 2 pieces together. In through the front towards the back. The back is threaded. Or the rear, I should say the rear impeller housing is threaded. I did notice, taking this apart, it was difficult to get these in and lined up. You waiting for me? Yeah. I'm just about done. Okay, and these are going to be 5/8. I was only able to get about 3 to 5 threads per. I'm not going to tighten those down all the way till I know they're all lined up. I'm basically making the back where the bolt comes out through the back. I'm just flushing that up, and there's about 1/8 of an inch left at the head. Not over tightening these, making it snug, holding the two pieces together. That gap in the cast iron I can see breaking off pretty easily. And there we are. Back together. Finished product. Okay. Here we go. Here are the 4 bolts. I just tightened that up till it was flush. Then I tightened them all down as soon as I knew they were all lined up. Everything's good back together. All right. Hope this was helpful.